Okay, y'all, this is my fourth time recording this video because of security settings on my new computer, and I'm so frustrated. I know y'all are too. I'm sorry. But hi, 505. This is Summer 22 post ISTE, where I am back. I apologize for being out of the loop last week as we did ISTE, but we are going to talk about the next steps in 505 in this video. If you go down, you will see that I have changed around the due dates. So we had stuff due on the 3rd. That just wasn't going to happen because my first video sound issue, my second video sound issue, and I was just out of the box with ISTE. So now I have these two steps are going to be due on the 10th, and then we'll have another either live class or screen recording, whichever y'all prefer, for the rest. So in this video, I want to talk about your evaluation table, funding sources, institutional description, and budget justification. Okay, so any of the examples that I go to are all up here in grant writing resources. This is where I'm pulling them from in case you would like to look at them. So the first thing I want to look at is the objectives and evaluation. So hopefully right now you guys have a set of goals and objectives that you and I have gone back and forth with a few times, and hopefully I've guided you towards starting to think about how you will evaluate these objectives and how the steps that you will take in order to get to the objectives. So the way that I like to do my objectives within a grant is to put it in a nice little table so that grant reviewers can see the alignment of everything. So first of all, you're really not going to evaluate your goals because those are more broad sections that you're looking at. Sometimes I'll put my goal in this table up at the top to remind the readers what I'm going for, but we definitely want to be able to evaluate our objectives. So I've put each of my objectives in this table, and then I have put how very specifically I am going to evaluate this. Make sure that this is something reasonable, y'all. If you're doing professional development, I don't think it's really reasonable for you, yourself, and you to observe every teacher's lesson to see if they put it into use. So, make sure that the evaluation method is very specific, but it's also doable. And a couple more steps will fill in this middle section of your procedures of how you are going to attain that objective. But for right now, this next steps, we are looking at objectives and evaluation methods. Okay, and let's go back to Moodle and see what our next step is: funding sources. So I know some of you have already done this, but if you haven't, this is where our funding sources are coming from. I always start in two places. This is the Louisiana Department of Education. They have a bunch of funding sources here. Remember, you're looking for grants with an RFP, a request for proposal, not simply a donors choose type thing. That's not what we're going for right now. Your parish website may also have some grants just for your local parish or district. This is also a site that I really like, teach.com, and it has lots of grants from like $500 to $50,000. And it also sometimes allows for multiple year projects. Remember, donors choose is not what we're going for right now. We are looking for a grant that has a procedure, an RFP type procedure fund. Not that donors choose is a bad thing, but you don't have to do very much grant writing for that. And I want you guys really to come out of this class feeling comfortable with writing grants. Okay, so if you are a non-public school or institution, you might have a little bit more trouble finding a grant funding source. Make sure that you are reading the RFP clearly to make sure that your school or the place where you work qualifies for that grant. And here's more funding sources as well. Okay, so that is the first step, the evaluation table and the funding sources. Your next is your institutional description and your budget. In order to do this, I like to look at examples of this, but I also like to give a little idea of a funnel type project. Okay, bear with me. I promise it makes sense. So when you're writing your who is going to be impacted by your grant, you want to start with a very broad perspective. So if your grant is going to target teachers in Louisiana, in Lafourche Parish, you're going to want to start with Louisiana, and you're going to want to start with Lafourche Parish, and you want to describe those things. You'll see in here I started with Nicholls State, and I really started very broad, talking about Nicholls State as a broad entity. Then I went to the College of Education, got a little more narrow into that funnel. You could go to your school that way. If you're going to do Chack Bay Elementary, you need to describe who is at Chack Bay Elementary, what's the socioeconomic status of this community, where is it located, what are its industries, its partnerships. Then you want to get even more narrow and say, okay, I am writing this grant for first grade students at Chack Bay Elementary. And you can really dig into this. See if you can get demographics, test scores from last year. The more specific that you can paint the picture of who will be impacted from your grant, the more likely that it will be funded. So again, when you're writing your institutional description, think of it like a funnel. You want to go very broad to very, very specific on who is going to be impacted by this grant. So that's your institutional description. Last thing that we want to talk about on this is your budget and budget justification. So up until now, I said put the stuff out of your head. When you're writing the objectives, you don't want to write for stuff. The budget and the budget justification, you are going to do your stuff. So in this budget, I wanted Chromebooks. This is how many, this is the total, and this is why I wanted them. But one thing I really want you to think about when you're doing your budget is, say you're wanting Chromebooks for your classroom. Well, that's great, but do you need a managing console? Do you need a swivel camera to support it? We even got stickers so that they could have College of Education written on the Chromebooks. So if you're doing a professional development grant, yeah, you need the LAQ registration, but what about miles for your teachers? Are you going to provide them with a hotel room? If you are bringing in professional development, what is the fee from AXI? Are there additional fees for follow-up? So make sure that you're kind of thinking out of the box, trying to get all of the things that you would need in order for your grant to be successful. Now, where do you get these numbers? When we get into actually submitting this, you may have to call your district to get district prices for this. But since we're in the summer, go to Dell.com, go to Amazon.com to get the actual number that you are looking for the budget justification. So that is where we are going to stop for this. Remember that each time you are ready for feedback, please reshare your Google document with me. Please make sure that you have the commenting section on, because remember, much more important than any grade in this class is that you really learn how to write an amazing grant so that you can keep doing this throughout your career. And I would like to give comments so that can happen. That's it. I think I've returned all of the texts and emails from last week that I missed. If I did not, please send them to me again. I am catching up this week. I hope everybody that had the ISTE door prize of COVID are now feeling better. My daughter is still on the mend. I hope you guys stay healthy and happy. And as always, please reach out with whatever I can do to help. Have a great day.